So now in this video we'll be doing about external and internal conditioning. So now external and internal conditioning is nothing but external and internal treatment. So now in these processes are used for removal of scale forming substances. So now we discussed about scale and sludge in boiler troubles, and we know what are the scale causing substances, what are the sludge causing substances. Like for example calcium bicarbonate, and then afterwards magnesium carbonate, magnesium sulfate, magnesium chloride are supposed to be the your scale causing substances. So now for the removal of scale causing substances, apart from using electric shocks, and then thermal shocks, hammers, and then you also use acids as well. So we all learn this under your removal of scales. But then there's one topic which we miss because it must be dealt in detail, which is something about external and internal conditioning. External conditioning is used for the partial removal of hardness causing salts, which is responsible for scale formation in boilers. That is just partial removal. The complete removal of such salts is supposed to be done by internal conditioning. So external conditioning is involves two types of process. You can two types of process or two examples can come under external conditioning. One is supposed to be zeolite process, which we discussed in the previous video, and then the next one is supposed to be ion exchange process. So now I have not written the name, so let me just write. It's supposed to be ion exchange process. So now the ion exchange process. Ion exchange process is supposed to be very simple. Okay, so now first we are supposed to know what is the main aim of this process. So now ion exchange process is known as demineralization process. So one thing which we should not get confused is production of soft water does not happen here. You get demineralized water. So now you might say that both are actually the same, but there is a very mild difference between demineralized water and soft water. So now ion exchange is for demineralization only, and then let's just discuss the difference between soft water and demineralized water. So soft water is supposed to be water which does not have calcium and magnesium ions. It does not have calcium and magnesium ions. Demineralized water will not have calcium ions, magnesium ions, sodium ions, potassium ions, iron ions, all cations, and then okay, let's just go with anions also. SO4 2 minus, and then after SO4 2 minus you'll be having Cl minus, Br minus. All the cations and all the anions will be removed under demineralized water, under demineralization process. But soft water causes only the removal of calcium and magnesium. So demineralized water is soft water, but soft water is not demineralized water, because you have learned a lot of such statements you have learned in your lower classes, like this is not there but that is not this, but then you have learned all such type of statements. You have yet another statement here, which is demineralized water can be called as soft water, but salt water cannot be called as demineralized water. And then you know why. Soft water just has calcium and magnesium, does not have only calcium and magnesium, but the demineralized water will not have any cation and any anion. All the minerals are completely washed off. So now this is supposed to be the main aim of your ion exchange process. Your ion exchange process will have a setup which involves a cation, and then it involves an anion as well. It involves a cation and then it involves an anion as well. And then next one is apart from this cation and anion, let's just discuss on how the cation resins. Because a cation exchanger will have cation resins, anion exchanger will have anion resins. So now let's just discuss on how anion resins and cation resins are represented. What is their main aim? What are the examples? And then we'll go to the process. So now next one is about, first one is cation exchanger. So now it has cation resins. It has cation resins. Cation resins are represented as RH2. Why do you represent it as RH2? Because the main aim of cation resins is to exchange its proton, which is proton is nothing but H plus cation. Its main aim is to exchange its H plus cation with the cation which causes hardness, or with any other cation, because this is a demineralization process. That is why you represent that with RH2. So what are the various examples of cation exchange, cation resins? Examples are RSOH3, so SO3H, sorry, RSO3H, and then you'll be having CH2, double bond CH, single bond So now you know that this is supposed to be styrene. Okay, this is styrene, but then the benzene in the styrene is supposed to be one carbon, one hydrogen atom of the benzene in styrene has been replaced by SO3H. It has been replaced by SO3H, and then you'll be having RCOOH as well. RSO3H, RCOOH, and then you'll be having ring SO3H in the styrene molecule. Okay, and then one thing which I have to mention is the capability of the resin to exchange its cation or exchange its anion with the cation or anion which must be removed is only on the basis of the functional group. Okay, so now here the functional group is supposed to be SO3H. Okay, here the functional group is supposed to be COOH. Here again your functional group is supposed to be SO3H. So now it is these functional group which has the capability to exchange its proton or exchange its H plus ions with the cation, which is the Coulson division of hardness of any cation for that matter. Okay, so now cation exchanger will have cation resins. Cation resins are actually represented by RH2, and then the functional groups are the ones which plays an important role in exchange of the cations, and then it can be SO3H or COH. These are certain examples of the resins. Okay, next one is supposed to be an anion exchanger. So now what are anion exchangers? Anion exchangers are supposed to be the ones which has anion resins, and then anion resins are supposed to be represented as ROH twice. That's how you represent anion resins. So now what are the examples? Cross-linked, quaternary, ammonium salts, urea, formaldehyde resins. So cross-linked quaternary ammonium salts and then urea formaldehyde resins are supposed to be few examples of anion resins. Anion resins are represented by ROH twice, and then the main aim of this anion resins is exchange its anion with the anion which must be removed. So now the anion which is removed in general is supposed to be OH minus anion. Okay, so now let's just go on with the process. So now the process is very simple. First, the respective salt which has a cation as well as anion is passed through cation exchanger, and now it reacts with the resins. When it reacts with the resins, it removes the cation. It is an exchange which happens, not removal. Exchange happens. Okay, therefore it is removed. Okay, so now exchange happens, and then afterwards your salts will have only anions, and then this anion will pass through this setup, and then will enter the anion exchanger, and it reacts with anion resins, and then there the removal of anion also happens. Afterwards, a cation and anion both will be removed from the respective water, and then afterwards next is it will flow through the outlet. So, for example, let's say that CaCl2 is present in water and you need to remove both the cation as well as the anion. First, it passes through cation. It passes through the cation exchanger. We know that cation resins need not be represented by the actual functional groups. It is enough if you represent it by RH2. Okay. So now there you will be getting RCA, and then you will be getting 2HCl. Okay, and then in case the respective salt which is present in water is MgCl2, and then when it reacts with RH2, you will be getting RMg, and then you will be getting 2HCl. RMg plus 2HCl. Okay, so now this will be kept as such, and then afterwards next is it goes to the anion. Now let's just continue with the anion exchange process, because in this process you have removed the cation. Ca and Mg has been removed. So now let's just, and then you know that chlorine alone is still present. Our main aim is to remove chlorine. Okay, this thing must pass through the setup and then enter the anion exchanges so that the chlorine is removed. So let's take HCl, and then they'll combine with ROH twice, and then that you'll be getting RCl, and then you'll be getting H2. So if you put 2 HCl, you have to put RCl2 here as well, because this is the valency of R is supposed to be 2. Okay, so now you'll be getting RCl2, and then now therefore your anion is also removed. Okay, so now you might have a question about regeneration. So now about regeneration, now as in zeolite process, you pass your zeolite which is already formed through NaCl, so it will be regenerated. For that one purpose, you have dilute HCl and dilute NaOH. Dilute HCl is supposed to be made use of for the regeneration of the cation resin, and then dilute NaOH is made use of for the regeneration of the anion resins. Let's see how it's done. Because initially in the cation exchanger, RCa is formed. Okay, so now when RCa combines with HCl, you'll be getting RH2 plus CaCl2. So now this is supposed to be the way in which you represent cation resin, isn't it? So you have already got your cation resin. Regeneration has happened with the help of dilute HCl. So now when you take dilute NaOH, take RCl2, which is already been formed in this case. Okay, RCl2, and then you'll be having NaOH. Okay, and then you'll have to put 2 here. So you'll be getting ROH twice and 2 NaCl. Okay, so now in this case you are getting ROH twice. ROH twice is supposed to be the way in which you represent your anion resin. So anion resin also has been regenerated in this process. So first is supposed to be the formation of RCa RMG, where it removes the cation, and then next is supposed to be in the anion exchanger for the formation of RCl2 or any other cation for the any other anion for the matter, and that removes your anion as well. You make use of these compounds for the regeneration of the substance which is present in the cation exchanger as well as the anion exchanger. The process is supposed to be very, very simple, just like the process which involves in zeolite process, but then the only difficulty in learning point of view is supposed to be the way in which you remember your advantages and disadvantages. There are a lot of advantages and disadvantages that you're supposed to remember, like in the case of zeolite, here as well. Here probably is a little minimal. Okay, so now the various advantages of this process are first one is it removes hardness up to 5 ppm. That what I mean by this fact is your hardness level will be 5 ppm in the end. In the end, it will be 5 ppm. So up to 5 ppm, you can remove hardness. And apart from that, it can remove hardness of highly acidic and alkaline water. Because normally in few cases you say that now in case there's a lot of acidic gases, it might cause a problem to the setup. The setup which you make use of for the removal of hardness, there are no such issues. Let it be as highly acidic or it will be highly alkaline, there are no issues. So first one is highly acidic or alkaline water can be treated. Okay, so now the next one, apart from highly acidic and alkaline water, can remove that means your hardness at the end after the treatment through ion exchange process will be 2 ppm. Okay, so now that is what I mean by the fact that it can remove hardness up to 2 ppm. So now these are the various advantages. So now the disadvantages are, first one is it cannot be used for treating turbid water. Next is it cannot be used for treating water which has iron and manganese in it. And then your last one is supposed to be it is very, very costly. So now why do we say that we can't use iron and manganese? Because iron and manganese are supposed to be certain substances which forms stable compounds. During the reaction, it forms stable compounds. Now these stable compounds, like in the case of zeolite also it forms stable compounds, isn't it? So because of that, it causes a lot of problems. And then turbidity, it reduces the output. The turbid water reduces the output. Output in the sense, your pure water, the outlet will generally have pure water or the water which is demineralized. the output of such demineralized water will be reduced in case if you make use of turbid water. And it's very costly to have such a setup because you make use of a lot of chemicals, right? First of all, you make use of chemicals which is dilute HCl, dilute NaOH. Cation exchanger has certain chemicals having a lot of functional groups, COOH, SO3H, and then your ion exchanger also has a lot of chemicals. You make use of a lot of chemicals, and the setup is very costly. So this is not affordable. So it's not affordable. The water, if it has iron and manganese, the water can't be used for treating. And then apart from that, turbid water also cannot be treated using ion exchange process. So now we discussed about external conditioning fully. In the next video, we'll be doing about internal conditioning as well. Thank you.